from the Katanning Landcare District Committee. Ella's going to be giving us an interesting talk today about restoring Lake Ewly. Didn't quite get it right. Did I get it close enough? I was going to dance to make it sort of settle in, but anyway, not quite there. A community-driven partnership to rehabilitating a wheatbelt wetland. Ella is a Landcare Program Manager at the Katanning LCDC, which is just 300 kilometres southeast of Perth. She works with broadacre farmers to improve agricultural sustainability and environmental conservation, mainly on private land. Ella lives happily, I assume, with her husband and her little bubby in a straw bale eco house on their sheep, grain and cattle farm. Welcome, Ella.
Good afternoon by a minute. So I'm here to talk about Lake Ewly. There'll be a test afterwards for pronunciation. First, let me introduce you to my lake. Lake Ewly is a 100-hectare lake. It's a kilometre long by a kilometre wide, and it's 15 k's east of Katanning, right in the heart of broadacre wheat and sheep country. It's a very unusual lake in that it has an inlet, but it has no outlet. When the early flows of the season, the water comes in. Once the lake is full, water simply bypasses the lake and joins the Cobblenine River system behind it, which flows through to Lake Dumbleyung and down into the Blackwood. It makes it unusual, but that is also where we're having our trouble. So a little bit of history of the lake. It was a very important freshwater source for Aboriginal people and early settlers. There was a small town, a railway siding, and post World War II it became a very popular recreation area for the district. In 1963, when the lake dried, as our lake regularly does, the locals got in and cleared all the standing vegetation to make it better for water skiing. Can you imagine doing that now? Take note of the little boy on the tractor. And from that, for decades, it's really been a mecca for recreation for the people of Katanning and the wider areas. That's a photo from the 1990s. Look at the colour of that water. You don't expect that 300 k's inland. But by the time we got to about the 2000s, 100 years of agriculture in this district really started to take its toll. Because as water can flow in but no out, it evaporates off. Water can evaporate. Sediment, nutrients, salt can't. They built up and built up and built up in our lake system. By the 2000s, have a look at our water colour. Oops, it didn't happen. There it did. Oh, we'll do that one. Wicked. By 2010, we'd had a total collapse in water quality. It was a stinky, yellow cesspool, 3 times the salinity of the ocean. It was disgusting. And people had abandoned it, obviously. Here's a little bit of our salinity information back from the 90s. And this is our salinity. As you can see, seawater's about here. As you can see, it just hit that point where it was a tipping point. It couldn't take any more. But the community, listen, they said this isn't good enough. This is our lake and we have to do something about it. We can't watch it do this. We've grown up on this lake. We love this lake. We're now driving hundreds of kilometres to go water skiing when there's a lake in our backyard. We've got to do something about it. So World Wetlands Day 2010, 4 years ago, we had a public meeting down at the lake in the most hideous weather conditions you could possibly have in February. To see if the community was serious about this. Is there enough people that wanted to do it? Can we do something about it? And it was a resounding yes. And that day, the Lake Ewly Working Group, or LU for short, was formed. And it was made up of representatives of Landcare, the Shire, it's a recreation reserve vested with the Shire, recreational boaters, conservationists, neighbouring landholders, and later also an Indigenous representative was added. We've got water skiers and bird watchers on the same committee. So, we got to work. The first thing we realised was Lake Ewly is a nothing lake. It's not Ramsar listed, it's not Conservation Estate, it's not Director of Important Wetlands. No one gives us stuff about that lake except for us. At first it meant that we didn't get any attention or the opportunities for funding were very small, but it actually was a blessing in disguise. So over the first autumn and winter we got to work doing what we could and we had to learn about this lake. We begged, borrowed, and if we did steal some equipment, I don't want to know about it. Equipment from agencies that would lend us stuff. We talked to the old people. We got histories of what the lake did. We went and got salinity information that people had in their pockets and their desk drawers that they picked up over time. We got out there and got our hands dirty and up to our thighs in sludge, collecting what we could. We learnt that there's 95 species of birds using that lake from local bird watchers' records. This man here, that was the little boy on the tractor in 1963. He's got a 4-year-old granddaughter, and he's on the committee because he wants her to enjoy the lake the way he did when growing up. Okay, and then it became, as we were learning more and more, we became apparent that we were nothing but just a bunch of farmers. No one was going to take us seriously. We had to get a little bit more organised, a bit serious. We had no funding still, nothing. So we got together and we wrote our concept plan, outlining how we were going to tackle this problem. It's not a small undertaking. And we identified there were 4 key components we had to do. Number 1 was we had to understand our lake system. Number 2 is we had to improve the health of the catchment. There's 50,000 hectares above Lake Ewly. If that's not healthy, neither will our water body be. Number 3 is we had to do some flushing and some diversion. We had to clean out the muck that had built up in that lake over the years and find a way to control water quality so we didn't get that build up again in the future. And the 4th thing we had to do was upgrade our recreational facilities, which was a crumbling boat ramp and a potholed access track. We also knew we weren't going to go forward unless our community totally supported us on what we did. So we were given the town hall by the Shire, although they said you're not going to need a building that big, not that many people are interested. We filled the hall to standing room only. People drove from other towns to come as well this night. And that night our community gave us unanimous support on what we were talking about to go forward. What it also did is it showed we were serious. And after that, this was September, so we started in February and this was September 2010. We had our first bit of funding, tiny little bit, to do a drain stenciling program with our local school kids, because both Katanning Town and Broome Hill Town are in the catchment of Lake Ewly. So we had over 100 school kids involved in that straight up. We also got our second bit of funding. The GSDC, the Grace Island Development Commission, gave us some money, and we matched it with some money from our local Rotary Club, our local Rural Youth Club, and from our Landcare group, to get our own consultant hydrologist in to start looking at what our options are. Lance, yeah, he had a big job because what he had to do is firstly he had to set up some sort of model of our catchment. It's never been gauged, it's never been monitored because it's a nothing to anyone. So we had to do a model of what we could. He really helped us also define what we wanted. We wanted good water quality. What is good? Helped us put some numbers on that. And then he did some preliminary design to show us what was possible in terms of engineering solutions to ensure that we had good water quality going forward into the future. And what he came up with was a restricted bypass at the entrance of the lake so we could control those early season flows. But key was a flushing channel to give our lake an outlet, something we could gate and control so that we could flush water through. Those were not to construction ready. We had a very small brief here, but that gave us some ideas of where to go forward. Oops, hang on, I'll do that one, yep. Simultaneously what happened is, everyone remember about 2010 it didn't rain, which really sucks when you're a grain growing area. But what it did is our lake dried again. And our community were really, really itching to do something. There was all this momentum. We had this big town hall meeting. We're going to fix the lake. We want to do something. What it presented is we realised we had this thick, black, nutrient-rich sludge, which was thigh-deep in some places, built up on our lake. Now the lake was dry. We should clean it out. We had no money, which was despairing to start with. Then we looked around and went, we're a farming town. We have tractors. We have trucks. We have graders and we have excavators and we have loaders and we have the men that know how to use them. So in February 2011, 1 year on, was the Great Julia Martup Sludge Clean Out. It was a week of diesel and testosterone. With the exception of the Shire grader, which we had for 2 days over the weekend, every single machine that came was owned by private contractors or private farmers. They came and they volunteered their machine time. Any machine breakages, they wore the costs of anything that happened. These guys were working, some of them were working under lights in the morning before sunrise, and they were still working under lights at night time. And you know, it's February, they're pretty long days anyway. Two local fuel companies gave us $12,000 worth of diesel. A local tractor dealership gave us their field mechanics every morning to service these machines to keep them running. And these guys just moved dirt and moved sludge and moved sludge and moved sludge. In 7 days, 1,400 hours of machine time was donated. But what went with it was the people. The people. People came and obviously drove. People helped with catering, with traffic control, with admin, with everything. It was a wonderful community event where people were gathering back together around this lake that we've ignored for the last 15 years. We almost needed a tourist information bay because people were driving from town to have a look and saying, I haven't been here since I was a teenager. Parents were bringing little boys after school to watch the giant Tonka trucks in the big sandpit. People were reconnecting with the lake. And it was a great mental health thing for, especially the men, the farmers. Some of these machines barely got used. This was a positive that came out of the dry year, that we could clean up our lake, and they worked together. And over the course of that week, 1,700 hours were donated by our community members in volunteer labour, volunteer time. And at the end of the week, we'd moved 20,000 cubic metres of nutrient-rich sludge from our lake. Not bad for a week. So, hang on, I'll turn back. So, while that was happening, simultaneously and over the years as well, we also got to work, so that was doing our clean-up, getting that build-up out. Simultaneously, we're working on that catchment. We've got to improve the health of the catchment. Landcare's been active in Katanning for over 20 years, so the farmers in the area have been doing Landcare work for that whole time. But over the last 3 years, we've planted just under 100,000 trees and done about 40 k's of fencing in the catchment. We partnered with an agronomist and a fertiliser company, and we've done a nutrient runoff trial on permanent pastures to try and reduce that nutrient runoff that was going into the lake. And the farmers were really aware about that. I thought I was really impressed. Like when we were doing the sludge clean out at one point, I saw one of the guys had a truckload of sludge and he wound his window down because he'd seen one of his mates who was a farmer in the catchment and said, "Hey Bob, got your fertiliser on the back, do you want it?" They knew where it came from, and it wasn't a blame thing or anything. They were just, this is commitment that 100 odd years hurt this lake, and if we're going to fix it, we all have to pitch in. So we've done that trial work, and that's an ongoing trial that's still going. We did riparian vegetation assessments of the 60 k's of creek line upstream of the lake, so we understood where our vegetation condition is. Also, with the help of the DAA and some of our elders, we've done a full Indigenous heritage survey of our lake, and we're working with the elders right now. I'm going to be putting in my application next week for some funding to do some interpretive signage of the Indigenous history of the lake. And we've also, through some of the bits of funding we've got through this, this catchment stuff's for a Landcare group, that's the easiest bit to get money for, so we've got some from the state and some from the feds and other places. That was the easier part. Water monitoring through the catchment and also in the lake, so we can start to get a better handle on our nutrients, our heavy metals, our salinity and pH as well. So while all this was happening, now last summer, so a year ago, we felt confident enough that we'd done enough work that number one, we'd understood our catchment well enough. Number two was improving the health of the catchment, and we're well underway with that one. Number three was the clean out and the engineering works. We've done the clean out. Still a bit stuck on engineering works, but that's happening, I'll tell you. And then the final thing was our recreation facility upgrade. Last summer we got some funding to do a recreation area plan with community consultation. Lots of work out there measuring where boat ramps needed to be in Carlsford Park and what toilets we should have and all the rest. We've just got all the funding we need, and we've started implementation of upgrading our recreational facilities. Our picnic tables have arrived, our access tracks going in, our shelters arrive next week, our barbecues are here. So that's all happening to bring back those community facilities around it. So, we're 4 years in, basically, World Wetlands Day. What have we still got to go? Do you like my clip art? Classy, isn't it? Top left-hand picture. I mentioned the engineering. This is the bit where, we've done all this work now, but if we can't control that water quality and that flushing through into the future, have we really done it? The state government's Living Lakes program have actually put in a consultant on who is starting this week, next week, it's Friday, isn't it? Next week, who's going to take those designs that our hydrologist did back earlier and really work them through ready to a full construction stage. So over the next 6 months, well in 6 months' time, we should have ready to construct plans for our restricted bypass and our overflow flushing channel. Our intent is then that we will, in autumn 2015, so almost a year from now, we will actually construct those. And so that will give us that long-term control of the flushing water through in and out of our lake. As I briefly mentioned, we've got the Indigenous History Signage Project, which we're hoping to get some funding for. And that'll go into our recreation area. It'll follow through the area that people are using where our new boat ramp and our picnic facilities are going. We've got a researcher coming this next week, again, doing some work on the banded stilts, which is further helping us to understand how our wetland is being used by our feathered friends. The last thing we really want to do, which we haven't, is probably the only thing we haven't really got started, is we really want to do some work on our macroinvertebrates. We know we've got 95 species of birds using this lake. What's at the base of the food chain, and get that baseline data before we put that flushing channel through so we understand. I've applied for 2 lots of funding for that so far and been unsuccessful both times, so fingers crossed. So what have we achieved? Short answer, the water's blue. People are back. Boating is back, absolutely. And if our water quality wasn't there, people wouldn't be back there boating. It should have been there Boxing Day. There were jet skis and kids with brand new kayaks, and there were sailboats and families and eskies and picnics. This is a place the town had abandoned for over a decade. People are back. So we're getting improvements in those water quality and everything are coming through, but of course we won't be able to maintain them if we don't get our flushing channel in. And people around town are still very committed. People are always bailing me up and asking what's happening next, can we volunteer? There's a lot of passion and commitment about this town. And I mentioned earlier water skiers and conservationists on the same committee. I have been absolutely blown away with the attitude of our entire community. The lake is for everyone, and everyone has embraced that. The respect and the collaboration that has occurred between all the different user groups has been just been heartwarming, uplifting, and you see everyone out there together. The water skiers want the bird watchers to still be there. The bird watchers still want the water skiers to be there, and that's a great step forward. So to finish up, the important stuff, well, the fun bits anyway. It really has been a very multifaceted, multi-stakeholder program so far, and we've still got a year to go. And I think the real message that came out for me was, it's not important to have everything in place before you start. What's really important is that you just start, because you can break it up piece by piece and you can get things as you need them, from where you need them, when you need them. But don't let that not having everything stop you from starting in the first place, because right now we've got a lake we all love and we're all using. Thank you.